What is the history of Balerion the Black Dread, the greatest dragon the Seven Kingdoms has ever known? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, this is the place for you. Welcome. This is another video co-produced with the wonderful History of Westeros. Please do check out their YouTube channel or podcast. There's a link in the description. Balerion was hatched in Valyria not long before the Doom, and although we don't know much about his early life, the Targaryen who foresaw the Doom of Valyria, Daenys the Dreamer, has long been theorised as a prime candidate to have been Balerion's first rider, a fact which House of the Dragon semi-confirmed in a random page of a book we briefly saw in Season 2. Daenys' father, the head of House Targaryen, was Lord Aenar. Lord Aenar heeded his daughter Daenys' visions and moved the family from Valyria to Dragonstone, along with all their wealth and household. They brought Balerion and 4 other dragons, earning him the nickname Aenar the Exile. When the Doom came, that left Balerion and those other 4 as the only known dragons left in the world. In the following century or so, House Targaryen lived in peace. There were no known major conflicts within the family or significant involvement in conflicts in Westeros. After all, who would make war on the one family with dragons when so many other houses existed? As time passed, Dragonstone passed from father to son several times, and the other 4 dragons who moved from Valyria died, of natural causes we're led to believe. But Balerion grew ever stronger and mightier, his scales of mostly black with some red. By the time Lord Aegon, soon to be called Aegon the Conqueror, chose Balerion, the dragon had probably acquired the nickname the Black Dread. The beast would have been over 100 years old by this time. Tyrion is the first POV to think about the dragons. He once stared at Balerion's huge skull, trying to imagine how large he was, and what he must have looked like in flight, breathing black flames tinged with red. His wings could engulf entire towns in shadow when he passed overhead. Like all adult dragons, Balerion's tail was a formidable weapon, and it said his teeth were as long as swords. It's possible some of these descriptions are exaggerated, but the last at least is certain, as Balerion's skull still resides in the Red Keep, teeth and all. Despite that, his jaws were so large that he often didn't bother with chewing. It said he could swallow an aurochs or a mammoth whole. Aegon participated in at least one war prior to the conquest. During the tail end of the Century of Blood, he joined with several of the free cities to push back against Volantis, who were attempting to take Valyria's place on the world stage as the dominant power. It was Balerion instead who took centre stage. Aegon flew to Lys and reduced the Volantene fleet to cinders. The ease at which he destroyed an entire armada must have given Aegon a taste of what the Black Dread was capable of. When his dreams of winter came, he acted to forge a kingdom with Balerion as his chief instrument, mostly to destroy, but also to create. I will save a detailed breakdown of Aegon's invasion for a future series of videos, watch this space, but it was almost easy for Aegon and his sisters. Balerion's flames were unleashed on all 5 towers of Harrenhal, and they went up like candles. The blackened, melted remains stayed as a reminder of the dread of Balerion. The burning of Harrenhal was followed by the Field of Fire, perhaps the most famous military victory in Westeros since the last battle itself thousands of years earlier. The largest army ever assembled, led by the kings of House Gardner and House Lannister with all their vassals, faced the dragons, and were wiped out almost entirely. House Gardner itself was obliterated, leaving the Reach without a royal house for the first time in eons. The Starks intended to fight as well, but as soon as King Torrhen laid eyes on the dragons led by Balerion and saw that Harrenhal was still burning weeks later, he changed his mind and shortly thereafter ceremoniously handed over his crown, becoming simple Lord Torrhen, as the Black Dread sat menacingly nearby. And that threat alone was good enough for much of Westeros for a long time. Aegon made a point to travel all over the realm on a variety of royal progresses, always with Balerion. He wanted as many eyes as possible on his great dragon. The sight of him on the Black Dread alone was surely enough to deter potential rebels in the vast majority of cases. Aegon claimed many swords from his defeated foes, particularly the slain, and sent them by the cartload to King's Landing, rather the site that would one day become King's Landing, for at the time it was little more than 3 hills and a fort. Those blades were forged by Balerion's flames into the Iron Throne. The Black Dread therefore forged the new realm of the Seven Kingdoms by destroying the old Westerosi kingdoms and making the king's new throne, the symbol of the new Seven Kingdoms. Of course, this new Seven Kingdoms did not yet incorporate Dorne, who refused to surrender like the other kingdoms. They were too smart to face the dragons in open combat, instead hiding underground while their towns and castles were torched from above. Eventually, Meraxes and Queen Rhaenys were killed over the Hellholt, and Aegon flew the Black Dread there for revenge. We're told that the sands around the Hellholt were fused into glass in places, so hot was Balerion's fiery breath. Dorne never surrendered, and though many Dornish castles have since been repaired or rebuilt, nearly 300 years later, many Dornish castles still bear the mark of Balerion's flames. From the Riverlands to Dorne to the throne room of the Red Keep, Balerion's legacy is still visible. There was no need for the Black Dread to go to war for the rest of Aegon's reign. Balerion's next rider, Maegor, was a different matter entirely from the start. Balerion helped Maegor usurp the throne. Maegor and Balerion was opposed by Aegon the Uncrowned on Quicksilver, a dragon less than 40 years of age. It was no contest. After that, usually Maegor's foes were the faithful, particularly the faith militant. The Church's position on dragons prior to the doctrine of exceptionalism was that dragons are demons, foul beasts worthy of nothing but death. But the faithful lacked the means to take down one such as the Black Dread. They never so much as wounded him, while he slew untold multitudes. In the year 42 AC, for example, while he was in the process of claiming the throne, he burned the Sept of Remembrance. While it was full of the faithful, some 800 were burned alive by Balerion's black and red flames. The dragon pit went up in its place, though it took 13 years to complete. Maegor was not defeated in the field. He died upon the throne forged by Balerion, that so many others would fight over in the years to come. However, Balerion would fight in no more wars, living his last years through the long peace of Jaehaerys I's rule. Not that the last years of his life were without incident. Princess Aeria, at age 14, one day went to the yard in Dragonstone and flew off on Balerion, just like that, only to learn a very hard lesson about dragons, control and willpower. If the rider is strong enough, they decide where the dragon goes. If they aren't, the dragon decides. The more willful the dragon, the more strength is required, it seems. Aeria was indeed a very willful princess, but she was outclassed by the Black Dread. A teenager on a black dragon, not able to control it, is foreshadowing Daenerys, of course, flying on Drogon deep into the Dothraki Sea. We're yet to see how much Dany will learn to control Drogon, but Aeria seems not to have reached that point, or only did rather belatedly. It seems that King Jaehaerys I was worried about Aeria coming to harm, but not just that. If she were to master the Black Dread, the most powerful creature on the planet, the same one who conquered Westeros for Aegon I, what ambitions might she entertain? Power can go to one's head, and they didn't know where she and Balerion had gone, even after months of searching. Balerion was not so much of a loose cannon as a loose nuclear missile. It turns out that Jaehaerys didn't need to worry too much about that, but instead greater horrors were discovered when Balerion and Aeria returned. We often focus on the horror of what happened to Aeria. Rightly, it's horrible, but we've talked all through this video of Balerion being the most powerful being in the known world. As far as we know, that is true, but this is what Septon Bath says about what happened when Balerion returned. There is something else, something even more frightening that requires mention. Balerion had wounds as well. That enormous beast, the Black Dread, the most fearsome dragon ever to soar through the skies of Westeros, returned to King's Landing with half-healed scars that no man recalled ever having seen before, and a jagged rent down his left side, almost 9 feet long, a gaping red wound from which his blood still dripped, hot and smoking. Balerion survived, but something wounded him deeply. What? We don't know, but whatever it was clearly the only time Balerion had ever faced a real challenge in combat. A disturbing mystery. Balerion was thereafter kept in the Dragon Pit, its first full-time resident. Access was restricted by the Dragon Keepers, even to or especially to the younger Targaryens. No one wanted a repeat of what had happened to Arya. Ultimately, this proved unnecessary, as age and the mysterious injuries suffered in Valyria had taken their toll. Reading between the sparse lines, Balerion seems subdued and old from then on. At one point, Prince Balon, a young boy but later known as Balon the Brave, smacked Balerion on the snout. The dragon responded like a huge family dog would to a kitten, by doing nothing at all. In 75 AC, Princess Alyssa had her eyes on claiming Balerion. The danger had passed, but the Dragon Keepers nevertheless persuaded her against it, saying he had become too old and slow, and that she would prefer a faster dragon. At this point, he was over 200 years old, and she took their advice, claiming Meleys, the Red Queen, instead. You might think that this meant Balerion spent his last years snoozing and ignoring Targaryen children, and to be fair, he mostly did. Nevertheless, he had one final rider, the future Viserys I in 93 AC. At the time, the Black Dread was weak in body but huge and still a powerful symbol, the Dragon of King Aegon. When Prince Viserys decided to try to ride Balerion, he was newly in line to the throne. He was not next in line to be king, but his father was the heir and he himself his heir. Viserys would have known that he had to claim a dragon. He would be king someday, but he doesn't seem to have been really the dragon-riding type. So perhaps that's why he chose the sleepy old dragon with huge symbolism, but probably not much energy for battle left. Viserys managed to get Balerion into the sky and intended to fly him to Dragonstone, but he realised the dragon was too weak to make the journey, short as it was. Instead, Viserys flew him around King's Landing 3 times. Slow, huge, and with enormous wings. He would be hard not to notice from below, even amongst those accustomed to dragons passing over. They would later learn that it was his final flight. That was the only time Viserys flew on Balerion. Balerion the Black Dread died the next year, and Viserys never tried to mount another dragon. Some questions obviously remain. Would Balerion have kept growing if not for those wounds, if not for living in the dragon pit? Dragons don't like enclosed spaces. Balerion is probably the best example of dragonkind we have in the world of Ice and Fire because he lived so long, but perhaps he isn't such a good example because he is exceptional. His shadow is everywhere. Dany takes the 3 ships Illyrio sends her and renames them Balerion, Meraxes and Vhagar. The one renamed Balerion was the largest, of course. The black kitten, formerly owned by Princess Rhaenys, Rhaegar's daughter, is also called Balerion, and Arya seems to form an odd bond with it. Tyrion and Shae have an illicit meeting inside one of the dragon skulls deep in the Red Keep, either Vhagar or Balerion, it's unclear. Even in death, Balerion's skull carries much weight and tells many stories. It was prominently displayed in the throne room of the Red Keep until the time of Robert Baratheon, who banished all the skulls to the basement. But now Robert is gone, and who knows who will end up on the Iron Throne. Young Griff, or Fagon if you prefer, will surely want to bolster his Targaryen credentials and drag it back up. And what will Dany think if she sees it? The weight of her legacy begins with him. Balerion was the key to the conquest and the key to the first Targaryen civil struggle. He was crucial to defeating Westeros' largest ever army and melted its largest ever castle. After Harrenhal and the Field of Fire, there was the forging of the Iron Throne, the Sept of Remembrance and the slaying of Quicksilver. He was the last living creature to see Valyria before the Doom, and perhaps the only creature to visit Valyria and survive. Dany's bloodriver Aggo says of Drogon, "There sits Balerion come again." And indeed, Drogon is a parallel to Balerion in many ways, some of which have probably yet to unfold. Any adult dragon is capable of vast destruction, but Balerion was larger and more powerful than any other we know of. Arguably, he did more damage and had more lasting impact than all the other dragons combined, a true exception among the most exceptional of beings. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.